The Assembly will now hear the address by His Majesty King Eswatini III, Head of State of the Kingdom of Eswatini. I request protocol to escort His Highness to the podium. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Majesty King Eswatini III, Head of State of the Kingdom of Eswatini, and to invite him to address the Assembly. Your Highness, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Madam President, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, United Nations Secretary General, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to address this 73rd United Nations General Assembly, where we have come to renew our commitment to creating an enabling environment for all mankind. Madam President, the theme of this session, making the United Nations relevant to all people, global leadership, and shared responsibilities for peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies, resonates well with the UN General Assembly Resolution 72/276 adoption on the 31st May 2018. The resolution is aimed at positioning the UN development system to better support countries towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs) under strong national leadership and international cooperation. When UN was established by our predecessors back in 1945, the main purpose was to reduce tensions and avert another conflict after World War II. Since then, we have converged at this General Assembly as a family to renew this commitment and analyze how we address challenges affecting the world. It is time to assess whether we are still living up to the ethos of our forefathers that sought to ensure the world never again gets to endure another world war, but rather finds peaceful solutions to resolving possible conflict. We are all aware of the existing pockets of tensions in different regions of the world, which require that UN member states speak in one voice when providing possible peaceful solutions. A fragmented approach would render peaceful solutions elusive for the affected countries. It is therefore imperative that we engage and resolve issues together as a United Nations family in order to ensure we end up with lasting solutions. To those countries experiencing conflict situations, we appeal to them to come up with homegrown solutions to address their differences. We urge these nations to avoid the use of force in an attempt to impose change. Where they do not see eye to eye, they need to adopt dialogue as best way to find lasting solutions. Where there's no loss of blood, unity prevails, whereas violence begets instability. Those who have lost lives and property in conflicts don't forget and their bitterness makes nation-building efforts much harder to achieve. The UN member states are strongly urged to avoid fueling tensions in troubled countries with a divided approach to interventions, as this subsequently defeats the purpose of the establishment of the United Nations. Our approach should always be to search and find an amicable way forward to all the challenges we face for the greater good of mankind. Another great concern is the imbalance between the rich and poor, which continues to widen by the day. This is despite putting in place sustainable development goals aimed at bridging this divide. As a UN family, we need to pay serious attention to these imbalances as they contribute to terrorism and social strife in the world. The African Union has also set out to improve lives with the goal to realize a well-developed Africa for all by 2063. It is important to support such programs which are similar to initiatives of other regions of the world, some of which have recorded great advancement in this regard. We urge the successful blocs to play a meaningful role in supporting developing countries that have good programs to transform their economies but lack the means to do so. The slow process of development for these countries adds to the burden of failing to cater for the social needs of our people. We need to find ways and solutions to speed up the process of developing sustainable economies in line with our sustainable goals by removing the stumbling blocks to development. It is perhaps time that we engage researchers to look into what developing countries need in order to fast-track economic growth and identify high turnover capital projects that would be best situated to catalyze this endeavor. No country deserves to go for a whole year without investment. There are numerous successful countries that can share their experiences of success. We can use this to assist developing countries in order to ensure that no country is left behind as we strive to achieve our developmental objectives. The African continent remains challenged with various diseases such as Ebola, HIV, malaria, TB, and many others that require large sums of funding to overcome. Africa has taken a resolution to eliminate these diseases within a short space of time. However, without funding, this will remain a challenge. Some of these health issues need further analysis, as in some cases where we have recorded success, we are confronted with the re-emergency of some of them in a more vicious state. It would be remiss of us not to thank and commend the support we receive from members of the UN family to needy countries, especially for health issues in Africa. We need to ensure that every citizen has access to basic needs such as clean water, health, and free primary education. We commend those countries that have reached the level of providing free education. It is only through investing in education that nations may produce a highly qualified citizenry and get to realize their full developmental potential. The need to reduce unemployment is a global challenge. So too is catering for the elderly community that has contributed immensely to the development of each country. They deserve to be cared for once they have run their mile. Addressing these issues is increasingly becoming a challenge given the declining donor funding, which means more hardships for our people. We should, however, seek alternative means of raising funding to avoid the undesirable situation where people resort to helping themselves cope with the global challenges. This poses a threat to peace, as they may do so in ways that would divert resources from addressing already existing challenges such as diseases. Madam President, it is unfortunate that the African continent continues to absorb more peacekeeping missions than any other United Nations regional grouping. This qualifies Africa proper representation in areas of peace and security, making it a key player as when matters of peace and security are discussed in all structures of the United Nations. We therefore plead that Africa should not be left behind. Her voice must be heard and featured prominently and permanently at the United Nations. As negotiations of reforms of the United Nations Security Council progress, the Kingdom of Eswatini calls for favorable consideration of the common African position and also for those countries that are not members of the Security Council. Africa calls for the allocation of not less than 2 permanent seats with all the prerogatives and the privileges of permanent membership, including the right of veto, and 5 non-permanent seats in the United Nations Security Council. Madam President, we remain confident that the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and Agenda 2063 of the African Union will continue to give us the proper guidance and the impetus necessary to eradicate poverty and create inclusive and sustainable development for all. The Kingdom of Eswatini has made significant strides in localizing and integrating the SDGs in its national planning processes. We have finalized the review of the National Development Strategy, NDS, 1997 to 2022, and it will soon be launching a revised national strategy. The strategy is themed the development strategy for Eswatini, promoting sustainable development and inclusive growth. This is expected to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs in the Kingdom. The Kingdom of Eswatini is fully involved in working towards a knowledge-based economy through development of science, technology, and innovation infrastructure in a bid to facilitate research and development. The Royal Science and Technology Park continues to be a key entity aimed at advancing scientific research and related fields. We would like to express our profound gratitude to the friends of the Kingdom who are supporting us in our endeavor to develop these fundamental initiatives. However, this work remains in progress since innovation, research, and development are evolving. Therefore, the Kingdom continues to seek more support for further strengthening of these initiatives that contribute to attainment of our national vision of 2022 and the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Madam President, just a few days ago, the people of the Kingdom of Eswatini held a very peaceful national election, which was free and fair. We are glad that international observers were in attendance to monitor the elections, and their conclusions were in line with our expectations. During the elections, the people nominated candidates in their chiefdoms to compete at constituency level, which call Tinkundla. The system ensures direct participation and promotes participatory democracy among our people. It is homegrown and is enshrined in our customs, traditions, and constitution. We fully support the participation of women in political decision-making positions and have recently enacted the election of women members to the House of Assembly Act to ensure their representation in Parliament. Madam President, as a country, we've also successfully enacted the Sexual Offences and Domestic Violence Act, a legal framework to protect women from domestic violence and sexual assault. This will give effect to relevant international legal instruments, including the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, among others. We are pleased to inform this noble assembly that the Kingdom celebrated her 50 years of independence early this year. We were grateful that the country has been able to champion her development agenda as free nation for 50 years. During this celebration, the nation decided to revert to our original name, which is Eswatini. Since time immemorial, the name for the Kingdom has always been Eswatini. Madam President, let me emphasize that the United Nations call to leave no one behind requires their identification, knowing where they are and understanding how they live, as well as identifying how they can be assisted in order to be at par with the rest. Addressing these issues will go a long way in rendering the United Nations more relevant to all people in the world. We would like to bring to your attention the unfavorable impact of being categorized as middle-income country on accessing external resources. This comes at a time when we need even more resources to inject innovations into our development programs around SDGs. We sincerely hope that the commendable reform efforts of the Secretary General will help support and reinforce our efforts in accessing external resources and securing sustainable funding mechanisms that will assist us advance towards realization of SDGs by 2030. Madam President, the Kingdom of Eswatini reiterates her unwavering stance in calling upon the United Nations to afford the people of the Republic of China, Taiwan, the opportunity to partake and contribute to the United Nations development system. Taiwan's experience in the various fields vital to the dimensions of sustainable development would go a long way in contributing to the work and membership of the United Nations. It is a strong call that the people of Taiwan are not left behind in making the United Nations relevant to all people, to be in line with the spirit of universality. Madam President, as I conclude, let me extend my congratulations on your election as the President of this 73rd session of this Assembly. We commend the United Nations General Assembly for the choice and confidence it has in you as the fourth female president of this august body in its 73 years of existence. Let me assure you of the Kingdom's full support as you execute your duties and responsibilities during your term of office. We further appreciate the Secretary General and all members of his staff for the continued support and hard work in improving the working mechanisms and relevance of the UN systems to all member states. From this session, we hope we shall come out with meaningful goals that will charter a better future for our respective country. I thank you. May Almighty God bless us all.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank His Majesty Kim Mswati III, Head of State of the Kingdom of Eswatini, for the statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we bid farewell to the Head of State.